So yesterday we got details of the eagerly anticipated fiscal stimulus plan from Joe Biden. It's about 9:15 in the morning here in the UK. So far the markets haven't had too much of a big reaction to the details. I think it was a little bit underwhelming. It wasn't anything above what anyone was expecting. When the US markets open later, maybe we'll see a bit of a shift there and see a bit more activity happening. We have got some data coming out later in the US session. So we've got like retail sales, consumer sentiment, I think some inflation data as well. We also had comments yesterday from the Federal Reserve that were quite dovish, so that could also be having an impact on the market's reaction to this. But in any case, let's go through some of the details. We'll start off by having a little clip of what Joe Biden had to say for himself. We will keep it short because he tends to drag things on and talk very slowly. But here he is.
Our rescue plan also includes immediate relief to Americans hardest hit and most in need. We will finish the job of getting a total of $2,000 in cash relief to people who need it the most. The $600 already appropriated is simply not enough. You just have to choose between paying rent and putting food on the table. Even for those who've kept their jobs, these checks are really important. You see, if you're an American worker making $40,000 a year with less than $400 in savings, maybe you've lost hours, or maybe you're doing fewer shifts, driving a truck or caring for the kids or the elderly. You're out there putting your life on the line to work during this pandemic, and worried every week that you get sick, lose your job, or worse. $2,000 is going to go a long way to ease that pain. We'll also provide more peace of mind for struggling families by extending unemployment insurance beyond the end of March for millions of workers. That means that 18 million Americans currently relying on unemployment benefits while they look for work can count on these checks continuing to be there. Plus, there will be a $400 per week supplement so people can make ends meet. This gets money quickly into the pockets of millions of Americans who will spend it immediately on food and rent and other basic needs. As the economists tell us, that helps the whole economy grow. We'll also tackle the growing hunger crisis in America. As I speak, and the Vice President-elect has spoken to this many times, 1 in 7 households in America, more than 1 in 5 Black and Latino households in America, report they don't have enough food to eat. This includes 30 million adults and as many as 12 million children. It's wrong. It's tragic. It's unnecessary. It's unacceptable. So we're going to extend emergency nutritional assistance for 43 million children and their families enrolled in the SNAP program through the rest of this year. We'll help hard-hit restaurants prepare meals for the hungry, provide food for the families who need it. We will invest $3 billion in making sure mothers and their young children have the nutrition they need. This will not only meet our moral obligation we have to one another, but will also spur our economic growth, get restaurants and workers back on the job. And as we work to keep people from going hungry, we'll also work to keep a roof over their heads, to stem the growing housing crisis and evictions that are looming. Approximately 14 million Americans have fallen behind on rent, many at risk of eviction. If we don't act now, there'll be a wave of evictions and foreclosures in the coming months as the pandemic rages on. This would overwhelm emergency shelters, increase COVID-19 infections as people have nowhere to go and can't socially distance. Next week, we'll take action to extend nationwide restrictions on evictions and foreclosures. This will provide more than 25 million Americans greater stability instead of living on the edge every single month. And I'm asking Congress to do its part by funding rental assistance for 14 million hard-hit families and tenants. It will also be a bridge to economic recovery for countless mom-and-pop landlords.
So the total amount for the plan is obviously $1.9 trillion, and this is a further package on top of the $900 billion that was agreed at the end of 2020. And this package will be funded with new borrowing, although this is just the first stage of the package. There's a second stage that he'll be announcing, I think, next month. And that second stage is expected to include longer term spending on infrastructure, green energy, education, and at least part of that funding, the second stage, is likely to come from tax increases for corporations and the wealthy. So this package is going to include $400 billion in new spending to tackle COVID-19, which includes $160 billion for testing and tracing and a new national vaccination program, because that's one of his big goals for his first 100 days of his administration, is that they want to vaccinate 100 million people. So that funding will hopefully help them to achieve that goal. Now, more importantly for a lot of people, the detail that everyone's been waiting for is about the stimulus checks. And so this new package includes stimulus checks of $1,400, $1,400 for each individual. So with the $600 that was agreed at the end of last year and has already been sent out, that brings the total to $2,000. Now, this has been a little bit controversial, and there have been complaints about this because people are saying that they were promised that they'd get an additional $2,000, especially the people in Georgia who are voting Democrat were told that if they vote for Democrats, then $2,000 checks will be going out of the door. And although maybe it was intended to be combined with the $600, apparently that wasn't very clear. And that includes AOC and Congresswoman Cori Bush, who have been complaining that $2,000 is not the same in total as an extra $2,000 stimulus. So there are calls for this one to be increased to $2,000 from the $1,400, but considering political analysts are already saying that this won't get past the filibuster and the total package will probably have to be compromised down, I'm not too sure about that one happening. So this package also includes $400 per week as an extension of the emergency unemployment benefits until September. There's $350 billion of a cash injection for state and local governments to prevent layoffs of public sector workers, an additional $50 billion for grants and loans for struggling small businesses, and that's in addition to the Paycheck Protection Program. He's also going to be looking for an extension of the federal moratorium on evictions and foreclosures until September, because that one only got extended by a month. And there's also going to be an extra $30 billion in rental and utility payment assistance. There's $130 billion to speed up the reopening of schools, and there are also other ideas being included there that have been floated in the past by Democrats but have been rejected by the Republicans. Like, for example, he's going to be calling for Congress to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. But I think legislation like that needs 60 votes in the Senate, and obviously the Democrats at the moment will control 50 seats, which means that they will need extra Republican votes to see that through. But Biden's hopeful that there can be bipartisan compromises, and I think that probably there will have to be negotiations being made in this package anyway. But he's saying that, he's calling for the support of Republicans. He's hopeful that it can happen. And so let's just break down those main elements of the plan once again. So we have $465 billion, that's for the direct stimulus payments for individuals, the $1,400. There's $350 billion in aid to state and local governments, $350 billion going to the extension of emergency jobless benefits, the $400 per week, $170 billion for the school and university reopening funds, and $160 billion for the coronavirus vaccination and the testing and tracing funds, because that's obviously an important goal for his first 100 days. There's $120 billion for child tax credit expansion and $250 billion for a combination of the other policy changes. So as I said, it's quite underwhelming. There wasn't anything that wasn't expected. The markets haven't reacted too strongly, but we'll see what happens when we have the US Open a little bit later. Of course, there is that data coming in later as well. We'll have a quick look at what's happening with the US dollar. If we look at Euro USD over here, so far, not much for a reaction. It's expected that Biden's policies aren't going to be very supportive of the US dollar, but so far the markets haven't had a big reaction. But let's see what happens today. It's only, coming up to 9 o'clock in the morning here in the UK, so everything could change later on. But we'll bring you more details as we get them over the next few weeks to see what sort of things we could expect, whether it's actually going to pass or what changes could be made and how it will impact the markets. But if you like this one, if you found it helpful, please do hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.